Okay, well, thank you everyone for joining me in today's webinar for adding and editing contact records. This is, part of the beginner series, and so both new users and experienced staff members are invited to this roughly 30-minute training. So today we'll be discovering how to add and edit data within your Databank system. If at any point in time you have any questions, any comments, feel free to put it in the chat box. We'll also be spending some time at the end to go over these questions. While I do the training, I try to glance over at the chat just to ensure that if that question is relevant to what we're sort of talking about, we put it, together. But also if you think of something that you want to talk towards at the end, we can definitely go over that. So the few learning objectives that we have for today is just how to enter a contact record using various methods, understanding the contact records, like the layout of the contact record, and potentially how to create an activity note within your contact records. So again, just a gentle reminder, we do have upcoming trainings available as well. So if you haven't had a chance to sign up for those, we have a free training sign up. Additionally, we will also be rolling out additional webinars for the Dbot tool. So I believe the next one is next Thursday, I believe. And so it's just more so how to create prompts, how to best utilize that Dbot tool. So if you haven't had a chance to do that, we highly um, encourage you to do so. And also, if at any point in time that's not right now today, you can also feel free to reach out to us via the support request. That will be the best way to do so. I know sometimes we do get the emails, and that's understandable, but just kind of as a side note, that may just be an easier way for us to not get a response to you right away, since we do get a lot of automated emails in our inboxes. So, for future reference, to get a more timely response and, go into like our ticketing queue, the support request will be your best bet. And then our support center will have more of the frequently asked question support articles. So that will be very beneficial compared to like the user guides, just because the user guides tend to be very lengthy. All right, so we'll go ahead and dive in and get started. So there's a few different ways to enter a contact record into your Databank, right? It really depends on how many contact records you're planning on adding onto your Databank. And so, for example, if the first one would be, I just want to add one single contact record, but first I would want to make sure that that contact record doesn't already exist. So for example, here I'll just go ahead and say Damian Lopez. All right, well, it doesn't look like there's a Damian Lopez within my data bank. So what I can do is I can click on here where it says click to add a new record. So I'm just going to open that in this second tab. So all I really need to do is put in the information associated to the contact record on this page. So again, we were able to access this page by looking up the contact record and verifying that that contact record doesn't exist. Alternatively, another way to do this is to go to the contacts dropdown and click on the add contact. So if I click on the add contact, it's going to take me to that exact same screen. Again, this is for one individual contact record. However, if we look at the contacts dropdown, we can see that we have two additional options that may be useful for us here. The first one is going to be the enter batch. And so entering a batch, it's going to be very useful if you're wanting to enter more than one contact record, but not like hundreds or thousands of contact records, because this is more so like a similar to an Excel spreadsheet. However, in this case, you can also enter contribution information into your batches that you're entering. So, for example, here, let's just say I'm gonna based on based on contributions by check, right? So we'll go ahead and see what that would look like. So I'm gonna go ahead and click enter. And so what it means here is, okay, so if you have a contact ID, you would put that ID here, first, last, company, address, city, state. So very, very similar layout to how you would enter a contact record individually. The only difference is that you don't see those additional fields because you're primarily focusing, in this case, entering check payments. So there's definitely different ways of adding contact records, singularly or in a group of individuals. So I would say when you are entering a batch of contact records, it can be more useful to use this tool when you are wanting to enter payment associated to your contact records. That way you don't have to manually search for that individual, and then manually add that into their contact record one by one, where you can do it all in a list. So alternatively, we have the upload tool. So by using the self-service upload, again, so it's under contacts and clicking upload, you are able to upload a spreadsheet um, based on like the personal information. So the personal information is just going to be, the information associated to the contact record, such as first, last name, company, mailing address, email address, any of like your personal custom fields. Those are what we would consider part of that self-service upload. Keep in mind that within the self-service upload, you are not able to also upload contribution information. And so the reason for that is just because we want to avoid any erroneous mistakes, right? So it can be very easy to potentially, do a typo for like a segment name or a campaign, and then if you do the upload, then the contact records don't have a valid campaign or segment to attribute the data in, so could potentially cause an error, right? So in order to avoid that this self-service upload, so I'm just going to click the edit. I'm just going to go into the map fields just to kind of see what this would look like. So ideally you have, your spreadsheet with your information, and then of course like the column headers. So here we would put, last first, but in this case, we would probably want to make sure that this particular file has the first and the last in two separate columns. So I would suggest in this particular instance to go back to the file, correct it where the first and the last are two separate columns. And then that way, when we come back and map the fields, the information gets attributed to the correct database destination field. So and then as we can see here, um, it might not even be the case that we need to do so, because we do have another column where the first and last are separated. So we could disregard this particular field by not attributing a database destination field to it. So that way, when we do the upload, it's not going to necessarily take that information. Again, here, whatever information that you do want to upload, ideally the case is that you already have those fields part of your personal Databank like custom fields. So if I go to, let's say, the other databases, this just might be another example. And not the best because it doesn't have, you know, correct, relatable, column headers and such data where we don't really know where that data is gonna come, right? So in this case, it might be best for me to just go ahead and delete this test database. And if I want to see what other previous uploads might have looked like, I can just click on the show inactive databases and it will go ahead and pull information based on uploads that have been done in the past and get an idea of what kind of mapping happened when the upload was attempted, right? So this is probably one of the best examples here where we have your first name, your last, your email, your home, phone, your website, if there is one, of course, issues of interest, membership, expiration date, and member join date. One thing to keep in mind if you are ever coming across this is if you do have like the contact ID part of like your one of your columns, you want to make sure that that information is accurate and relevant because we have had instances in the past where one contact ID might have not been the actual individuals uh like Rebecca Carpenter, like it might have not been that contact ID, so that information that gets uploaded would override Rebecca Carpenter's. So that's just one thing to be mindful. And then on the other hand, alternatively, if you're, want to be more on the cautious side and would prefer for one of our tech representatives to do the upload for your organization, you can go under the administration dropdown and click the full service upload. And so this would allow us to upload the information for you. And so this is more in handy, if you are also wanting to upload like contribution information. Usually there is a minimum of a $50 service fee. However, if you'd like an estimate for it, we can always provide that before actually doing the upload for you guys. But that would just ensure all data, gets attributed correctly and there's no like discrepancies within the actual contact records and the data that was uploaded. Alrighty. So now that we've gone ahead and just looked at the various ways of how to enter a contact record or various contact records into your data bank, we're going to go ahead and just look at the data associated with the contact records. And one thing I didn't mention, the other way where contact records, get added into your data bank, of course, is if they are filling out one of your forms, whether they're on the donation forms on your website, your sign up forms on your website. Those are going to be the more, I'd say, automated way where you guys don't have to manually, add in a contact record. So we're going to go ahead and add Damien into our database. We're going to click add new record. And so we can see here, we have to add in the first name. And one thing to keep in mind when you are adding a contact record is that all of the fields associated within the contact record, they're all optional. There's no one required field to make it a contact record. So if you only wanted to have like a first name, that literally could just be like your contact record. However, it is the case if, the more information we have for an individual, the better it will be for us because, we can segment it based on, their preferences, based on the information that gets filled out. So here, as we can see, this particular contact record has first and last Damian Lopez as like the main um, name of the record. However, let's say I go ahead and add the name of the company this individual is associated with. So our nonprofit. and we're gonna go ahead and click save. So because we did add the company name, it will list it on this in the center. However, if I want to make this contact record our nonprofit's contact record, all I would need to do is delete the first and last, and we will notice that when we click save, it will go ahead and attribute this contact record as a quote unquote company contact record. So that's going to be the main way to distinguish this. And then, of course, as you know, you go on and decide how you want to, establish your data bank. You could create relationships between, an individual's contact record with an organization contact records, identifying, okay, that Damian Lopez is an employee of our nonprofit. And so we're going to go ahead and just keep going with this and take a look at how that will look in a little bit. Name two is totally optional. Sometimes it's the case that individuals that are like in the same household would like to share one individual contact record. It's not mandatory, but it's available there. And so work title, again, completely optional, but of course, the more information we have, the better. We can see here that as I'm typing my address, it's giving me suggestions based on the information I've already typed in. And so we actually have, um, I wouldn't a partnership with like the USPS database. So this information is accurate as this address bar information gets pulled from the USPS database. So we can verify this information by clicking this check mark that right here, and it gets the 4 last digits of that zip code get added additionally. Country, again, completely optional, but sometimes, we do have clients that have, contact records that, may reside in Europe, and it's important, for them to distinguish between, the contact records that, reside in the US versus those that, may have, um, residents, on the other side of the world. Home phone, work phone, phone numbers in general don't have a right or wrong format. So if you wanted to use dashes or spaces, that's totally fine. Fax, we don't use that as much, but it's available just, in case that information, is needed. So here we can just go ahead and say, um, put in the phone number, email. The email component is probably going to be the more important parts here. And so here you can have more than one email address within a contact record. However, if you and you can separate it by a semicolon. However, one thing to keep in mind here is that if a power mail does get sent to, in this case, Damian Lopez, info at the databank.com, and let's say Damien at our nonprofit.org would also get that email. So both cases, in both email address, both instances, they will be receiving that same power mail. So again, depending how you want to do this, you may have like a personal contact record for Damian Lopez with his, personal residence mailing address, and then one where it's attributing the company address, and then have the two emails, listed separately. But again, that's, for your own discretion of your organization to make, just depending on how you want to segment, the communications that you want to send out to your individuals. The website, again, it's completely optional, but it does create a hyperlink within the contact record, so you can click on it and get sent to that website. Now we are going to be looking at the personal custom fields. So In my particular case, I have it where we are able to modify the options associated within our personal custom fields. So depending what your personal custom fields are, it might be a custom text input. So it could be like an open-ended question. It might be a checkbox where you can select more than one. It might look something where it's a custom drop down. It might be a multi-select where you can do a like a control click to do select more than one option. And so I'm gonna go ahead and just save my changes so I don't lose that. But I'm gonna go back to my personal fields and demonstrate how you can edit your existing options. So here I'm going to click on that field name and I get, sent here to list my existing data values and screen values. So we are able to add more than, add more options. The only thing that we are not able to do, like as users, is delete existing options. And if you'd like for us to, repurpose an existing field or modify and delete existing options, feel free to open a support request and we can do that for you. Most of the times we will ask like, hey, is this particular field okay to be cleared out from the contact records? Because we have to be mindful that if we do delete certain fields, they will no longer be searchable. You will no longer be able to report on them. And essentially what it just means is that data would no longer be there. We can always create a backup for you, but most of the times it will be the case that it's like, you know what, we're actually not keeping track of that information anymore. It's not relevant, so it's okay. Just clear it out, remove it from that data uh, field itself, and add, the new ones. Additionally, if you don't see like hyperlinks for your personal custom fields, we can add that option to your data bank, of course, at no cost. It's just almost like a switch that we have to do via the back end. But, sometimes we do have instances where clients, prefer not to have, this kind of access, just to ensure, that there's no discrepancies associated or created with, having that capacity. But I did take a note, Hannah, that you said that um you don't have that option. So after this webinar, we'll make sure to give you that permission. But yeah, if other users, like notice, oh, I'm hovering over like that field name and it's, blue and it switches color, it just means that you are able to add additional options. But as far as like removing those particular fields, it's not part of the user's interface as of quite yet. Again, just to ensure that we're not making any erroneous mistakes by accident, right? So down below, we'll also take a note that we have flag fields available for our clients to utilize. And so flag fields are a little bit more limited in the sense that they have, I believe, a 15 character max. Initially, it was a 2-character max, where it was primarily used for like a yes, no type of deal. They can also be check boxes, as we can see here. But flag fields can also be used to tag a group of individuals. So, one example that I like to give out is like, for example, if we have a client that says, hey, I want to do a mass deletion of these contact records, they'll use one of like their empty flag fields and tag these individuals with like a 2-character code that says TD for to delete. And then that just allows us, Databank staff to just look up that flag 5 with TD and pull those selected contacts without, mistakenly deleted a contact record. And in regards to the deletion of a contact record, if it's ever the case where you accidentally merge a contact record, or you might accidentally delete a contact record or several, you can feel free to open a support request and we can restore those contact records for you. So that's available. And if you ever find yourself that you need, to do so, rest assured that that information will be retrievable. A part of the custom fields that are available, there's two amount fields and two date fields. Depending on how your Databank uses those fields, it might look a little bit different for you. So here we have just an amount field, an external ID field, a membership join date, a membership expiration date. Again, sometimes we have clients that use that for like date of birth. And again, just depending on what their purpose is of, capturing data, that might be a little bit different. The salutations are just more for titles and custom names. Notes are just like, for example, if this was Robert, he likes to go by Bobby. So for Damien, I can say, Damien likes to go by Didi. Sources. So this is going to be more of like the best way to look up contact records that have filled out a specific form, or in essence, the sources just means how they got into the database. If we manually type in a contact record, there's no source that's going to be attributed to it by default. But if the contact record comes in from a form, or if it comes from an upload, the source code associated to either that form or the upload would be added into the source text box. If, like you add, another file and and for example, Damien already existed there, then that information would get appended. And so in regards to the dub group, that's just for duplicate group. If you want to create a duplicate group that you want to go ahead and merge together at a later point in time, this is what that field would be. Contact preferences. So by default, everyone will have email okay, post email okay, phone okay. The only one that gets automated slash updated, and meaning that, based on what happens, it will get automatically updated, excuse me, will be the email field. So if a person unsubscribes from, one of your communications, it will switch from okay to unsubscribed. If, for example, after sending a power mail to this individual, they get a hard bounce, it means that it will switch from okay to a bad email. So a hard bounce would usually mean that that email no longer exists. 3 soft bounces would be triggered and then converted to a hard bounce. So soft bounces usually are like automatic replies. However, let's say Damien was on vacation today and received, or this week, and received 3 power mails, which would then be converted to a bad email. If he came back next week and started opening those missed emails, then his email preference would be switched back to okay. So the only ones that don't get automated like that would be postal mail and phone. So those would be more of the manual contact preferences where individuals would have to manually go in and update that information. We do have the opportunity for individuals to opt in for SMS text messages. Usually what we recommend is for individuals to create a publication where individuals can opt in to receive text messages and therefore, be able to receive text communication, but first we do want to make sure we give them the opportunity to opt in to receive those text messages. Max requests per year. Again, this is not really going to be automated, but it is available in case there are individuals that have a limit to the amount of times they would like to be reached out to. And then also, this is just, more or so for your organization, but the data bank does not share any information with any third parties at all whatsoever. So again, it's may or may not be applicable to your organization, but it's just there in case you'd like it. And so, based on the information that we filled out for the mailing address, the district information would get populated. So I'm going to go ahead and click save. And so again, just based on the information that I did fill out, my contact record gets updated. And so the mailing information will be listed over here on the center. The more personal custom fields attributed to the contact record will be listed on the right side. And then the personal, like, contact information such as phone, email, work title, website information would be listed on the left side of my contact record. So this is just, again, looking at the history tab. You'll notice that when you look at the contact record on the top left corner, you have the contact ID associated to your record. And that's just going to be unique to this individual. So no other individual will be having 24244 as their contact ID. Over on the top right corner, we have a few different things. We can subscribe this individual to an automation email series. And we can, talk a little bit more about what that is later on. Here we can do a mail merge for this individual. Here we can also add this contact record to our selection. And then lastly, we can add this contact to your address book. And then once we scroll down, you'll notice that you have your activity history over here on the left-hand side and more of the contribution slash payment history over on the right side. Earlier we mentioned that we were going to take a look at how we would add an activity note. And so if you want to add an individual activity note, you would do so here. Go into the contact record and click on the plus icon. And so here you put in the activity date. When did you have that interaction with this individual? So, for example, today, let's say we had um, we can even do like a scheduled email to see what that would look like. So we can do scheduled email for him and then say this is going to be part of our welcome series, and then we're going to select the week 1. So ideally, when you are using the scheduled email functionality, the idea here is that you already have sort of your Power Mail folder and Power Mails already created so that they can populate once you do select the activity type. And so what's going to happen is that when we do submit this activity for this individual, it's going to go ahead and trigger that, okay, um, Damien will be receiving this scheduled issue, welcome to our nonprofit, tomorrow. And basically, once he does get this email sent to him and he opens it, it'll create an activity note that says open or click through on the links and so forth. Additionally, as we can see here under the activity history, you may have this BCC and then followed by this email address. If you don't see it, feel free to also reach out to us and we can make sure to add that for you. But what this really is that you can copy this email address. And if you have, let's say, email communication with Damian Lopez, let's say outside of, your data bank system where you're sending out power mails to them, but more so, let's say through like your work Gmail, then you can include this as the BCC and it will record that email interaction between, let's say, yourself and in this case, let's say Damien. And so you don't have to manually add that interaction into the activity history. And yeah, and so as we go on, you'll notice that, these gray tabs don't have any information. So, for example, if I go to the subscription, I'll notice that this individual is not currently subscribed to any publications. But if I wanted to, um, let's say, subscribe them to the fundraiser or the volunteer opportunities and the monthly, I'll go ahead and click submit. So once I go into the history, you'll notice that that tab gets switched from gray to white. So that will be the main distinction between, seeing what these other gray tabs are. Of course, depending on how your data bank is set up, you may or may not have all of these additional ones on your contact records. But if you are interested, in learning more about, what other potentially, things can be added, feel free to reach out to us. So the last thing that I would like to go ahead and just briefly go over is just a little bit more in depth about tagging your contact records. So earlier I mentioned how we can, one, tag your contact records using your flag fields. And then two, when you use that same tag selected, you have the capacity to also create a bulk activity note. So in this case, I'm just going to create a brief search. So I'm going to go to contributions and I'm just going to click find. So this is just going to find all of the individuals within my data bank that have made a contribution at any point in time. And so again, I didn't specify any dates. I didn't specify any campaigns. I just want to look at everyone that made a contribution. So let's say that I want to tag these individuals and say, okay, well, I can either create an activity note in bulk by filling this information out. So whether it's a scheduled email that I would like for these individuals to have, or alternatively, let's say I am sending them a thank you letter, right? So I'm gonna say, okay, well, the thank you letter was done, let's say by me, and it was done either by email or by letter. And then the campaign is totally optional. It's not really um mandatory, but say, okay, sent thank you letter for making a donation. Again, a very broad example, but just an ability to add an activity record in bulk. So all I do was click add activity note, click on Abbott, and then we'll see, okay, well, you know, it does have the date for tomorrow, but we could just that hypothetical scenario where we sent them a letter, tomorrow. And then alternatively, the last option is to do a flag field. So if these were the groups of individuals that I wanted to quote unquote delete, I could select that empty flag field. So we can see flag 5 has no field name attributed to it. So then just click TD, update contact records. And let's say go back to this contact record and we can see that flag 5 is listed with TD. So we can see here, TD. And yeah, so I realize we have kind of gone over a little bit of our time. So we can go over any questions. So I see that there's one. Is it possible to delete a batch of activities based on a note that we created in error? Yes, good question. So here under data tools, we have an option called delete activities. So for example, here, I'm gonna go ahead and base the criteria on, let's say, Damian Lopez, right? So here I put in the date. I know that I put it for tomorrow. I know that the activity type was scheduled email, activity method email. Of course, the more information you put in, the more narrow your selection of activity criteria will be pulled. But if you, let's say, just put in the date, it will pull, all of the activities that might match that criteria. So I click preview activity records. Okay, and then it tells me, okay, we found one activity note. And so it's looking at, okay, yep, this was the scheduled email. This was the issue. So I'm gonna go ahead and click delete. Are you sure you want to delete these one activity records? Yes. Click OK. And so once I go back to Damian Lopez, I can see that he no longer has that activity note within his contact record. Yes, there is a way to merge two duplicate contacts. I believe we will be talking about that in more of our cleaning data within your data bank tool. Within your data tools dropdown, you'll see that there is a duplicates tool. And so this will be the way where you can go and merge multiple contact records at once. Any other questions that anyone else might have? Yeah, of course, no problem. Great. Yeah, no. So again, the main goal today was get an understanding of how to add contact records within your data bank, understand the kind of information that gets attributed to your contact record. And then in our next training session, we're going to be looking more thoroughly and more in depth on how to, use your search tool to be able to build more precise search queries and select a group of individuals that may match that specific criteria. And if you think of any questions in the future, feel free to reach out and we'll be more than glad to answer those for you. Alrighty, well, I hope everyone has a great rest of your day and we'll be in touch next Thursday or this Thursday. You're welcome, Becky. Have a good one.